Welcome. I'm Debbie Rosas, and you are listening to Get In. Yep, it's all about getting into conversation about the body and about the life that we each live, authentic, individually, subjective. There are a lot of similarities and oh, so many differences, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. I am the founder of the Nia Technique, a body and life movement art practice and music art that has been changing people's lives over 40 years. Yes, I can't believe it's been at least 40 years. And my guest today, well, was part of the early years. I can't wait to talk about that. Our topic today is what's something that is really, really important to me. And the word feminine, feminism, woman, she, those are words that I honor, that I relate to. They define a part of who I am. And yet, when you think about language and you think about where we are in today's world, language has changed. The meaning of words has taken on a set of wings and flown into dimensions I never could have imagined. And I find it interesting. I personally am not offended by any word or any language, but that's just me. Not everybody is like that. I also believe that what's most important is self actualization, coming into oneself, one's being. And it all starts where? In a body. Everything we experience, no matter what you call it, no matter what you name yourself, it happens in a body where we receive and we transmit information, sometimes without even being aware of the message that we're transmitting. Our topic today, the feminine, I look at it as a word of extraordinary intelligence. It it's that thing that we're all born from. It lives in all of us, this beautiful mix and blend of yin and yang energies. Having studied the martial arts, I'm fully aware of what it means to use the yang energy and also to sustain everything with the yin energy. I use it for movement, I use it in my life, and I also use it a way to create balance in my life. I have a guest today, not one, yes, but you get two, both movers and shakers in the world and also in the world of feminism. And I'm going to say a certain kind of empowerment that we're going to dive into that I think you'll find interesting. Maria Aparo. Now, that's that little person that I told you that was a part of my life early on when Nia was just beginning here in Portland, Oregon. Oh, I remember well when she left and she was going to become an actor in New York City. We gave her a big going away party and it was so fun. Well, let me tell you, she defines her beingness, who she is, as a queer feminist. We're going to ask her what that means. I don't have a clue. She is a multidisciplinary artist, a producer, a former sex worker, activist, and a mother. Wow. Now put all that together and you get a real powerhouse for sure. She's renowned for her groundbreaking projects that defy expectations. I love that. That means she's a little scary, and I kind of like that. She's fearlessly blurs the lines between art and life. And if you know anything about Nia, you know that we say life is art, and it's important to live your life as art. She has a passion for art, her life, and her work. And this work is something very, very deeply meaningful to her. And her partner is called the Bechdel Project. Now, Jens Rasmussen, the other half of this feminism, this brilliant wisdom, from peaceful, boy, wouldn't we love it today, from peaceful protests to captivating presentations. I'm talking about a spirit that lives in a body that champions positive change. As a driven leader with a knack for building relationships and igniting creativity, this is a spirit that's committed to making a lasting impact in the world. I love that. A lasting impact, not just now. So, when you hear that, that ego is not really a big part of the equation. Lasting impact. He co-founds the North, who was a co-founder of the North Brooklyn Community Boathouse to increase access to New York City waterways. Don't you love it? He led Save Buswick Inlet Park movement, sourcing valuable parkland and changing the map of New York City forever. Land, such a precious thing. Parks, so precious in New York City. He's the co creative director of the Bechdel Project, supporting the development, here we go, supporting the development of bold, of bold feminist stories for the stage and screen. Now, we all know that our life, it's a stage. And the screen, well, we're the one playing the parts, and everybody's watching the movie, including us. His creativity and vision is vast, including creativity of a wildly successful platform of uncensored new work. I love that. Uncensored new work, bringing life to acclaimed online interactive play called American Dreams, the immersive canoe play project, and No Shame Columbus. Can't wait to hear about those. Beyond the stage, you're going to hear from two people who are dedicated to advocating for you to be your best you, no matter what, and for social justice for all people. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Jens, for being with me. I'm thrilled to have you and thrilled to dive into this wonderful conversation. So, you love stories. You talk about stories all the time. So, I want to know the story, Maria, because I read this, I went, "Does she really mean that? A queer feminist?" What's the story behind that statement?
Well, the story behind well, it's 2 separate statements, actually. I don't think there's no correlation necessarily. You don't have to
Okay.
be a feminist if you are a queer person. But what that essentially means is that I'm a bisexual woman, and I've had relationships with both men and women. And I have identified as a feminist and advocated for feminist causes ever since I was probably, as I mean, prepubescent. I always was told that you can be whatever you want when you grow up. And from the first moment that someone said that, no, you can't do that because you're a girl, I said, no, that doesn't really sit well with me. And then later I found a name for it, and it's feminism.
Beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
when you think about your understanding, both of you, and you think about your understanding of the word feminism, let's say 20 years ago, and where you are now, what has changed that in your heart you can say, I always kind of felt it. It makes sense now to me. Some of the puzzle pieces are fitting together.
Mm. I actually thought a lot about a version of that question when preparing for this interview and was musing to myself about how the versions of feminism that I learned throughout the past decades of my life, um, and the versions of feminism that I've lived in the past decades of my life have all um, transformed and grown and changed naturally with my lived experiences. And I have to say, since becoming a parent and also becoming the co-creative director of an organization that champions stories by feminist writers, my current definition and what I really align with and has opened my eyes to a lot more is intersectional feminism, and the idea now that, um, you know, it's about equity and accessibility, not just for all humans, not just if you are born female identifying. And I think what really opened my eyes to that was learning through my own artist journey that certain changes in your life as you get older, as you have children, maybe if your economic situation changes, that certain things that you maybe would like to have access to change. And a lot of feminism that I learned about growing up, and I think that came before, really was coming from a very privileged place where there was the assumption that you had certain choices in life from the perspective of maybe, a middle class educated white woman. And as I've had certain experiences, I've learned that that's not the case for everyone. And so looking at things like race and classism and ageism, all play a big
Ableism.
ableism, all play a really big part in my view of feminism currently. Yeah,
Beautiful. How
that's
about you, Jens?
yeah. What about you?
Um, yeah, well, as an interloper, as an ally, um, it's a constant process of learning and listening. I think that's my primary job as someone who identifies as a feminist who's doing this work, is to do a lot of listening and look and listen for where I can support. I certainly have my own feelings about the benefits of feminism to me as a man, in terms of like, as you were saying, integrating yin and yang in a society where um, integrating the feminine into a male body is not always respected. It's reviled sometimes. I think we can certainly see that in the current culture war that we're having around trans rights. Um, so, yeah, honestly, I don't even remember, like, 20 years ago, what my feminism was. I certainly identified as someone who respected women, but I don't think 20 years ago that I don't know that I would have called myself a feminist. But I do now. I'm happy to have that label, to give myself that label, proud of it. Yeah.
When you use the word, you talk about the intersection of feminine into something that is broader. Describe what that means. What does that picture look like? Does that mean that um, you'll give yourself permission to cross dress during the week? What are we looking at here?
It's more so. Well, you wanted to jump in first.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to. When we talk about intersectional feminism, it's understanding that, right? So understanding the intersections of privilege,
Mhm.
right? So,
Okay.
Mhm.
in a white supremacist, patriarchal, Christo Judeo culture, those of us who are people who are feminine and people of color and Islamic are not dealing with just one um, obstacle. They are dealing with multiple obstacles, and I'm leaving off disabilities.
Mhm.
When we talk about um, the obstacles that women face, in the past it was the obstacles that middle upper class white women faced,
Mhm.
and those that movement didn't recognize that other other people with complicating, intersecting uh,
Social issues. Yeah.
identities
Mhm.
did not have the same privileges
Hmm.
that white middle class, upper middle class feminists did. And so there was a struggle there, and and that's happening all over
Hmm.
and again, going back to the work that I have done and continue to do, privilege is invisible to those of us with the most of it.
Hmm.
And so that's where the listening comes in, and needing to yeah, listen and get comfortable with being uncomfortable in
Yeah.
those conversations.
I think also too, it's more tangible to also maybe use an example
Mhm.
of what we mean by intersectional feminism, and understanding where there's certain aspects to someone's life that we just don't understand.
Mhm.
Um, and so, for example, say I wanted to even just set up a meeting to say, I want to have a meeting about feminism. Hey, women, come meet with me. But I choose a location that doesn't have an elevator. I pick a time that's really like not conducive to anyone who has small children because it's bedtime and dinner time. I don't consider the fact that like maybe certain people can't take off work at a certain time to access it. I don't make it virtual, or I don't record it. I don't take into consideration all these things. So really what I'm doing is I'm offering something that really benefits a sliver of people, as opposed to thinking, if I want to serve all women and I want to serve all feminists, then let me make it the broadest accessible thing I can, and let me help accommodate that. And that addresses these intersectionalities between people's access to things that they deserve.
So when we think about the feminine as a nurturer, we think about the feminine as a holder of space. We think about the feminine energy as what allows the time and the space and the cultivation of things to grow in their own natural time. We think about feminine as magnetic attractor, a drawing in. Um, do you? I relate these things to being a good human being. So even if I take
That's
the
why the
word
world would be better with
right.
feminism.
Yeah. So if I take the word feminine is out and I say humanism, right?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all pause for a moment and in the invitation to invite people in to learn together, to grow together, to, of course, think about a location and a time that would be accessible, right, to everyone. I think that one of the elements that's so powerful about the change that we're all going through right now is the awakening to the fact that if I have a gift, if I have knowledge to share, then I can make it accessible to a much broader audience than maybe I would have in the past. And that's becoming aware that there's more to life than your world. And as you talk about bringing in other stories and hearing other people's stories so that we can have another reality check of, oh, wow, that perspective, that. And I think
Hmm.
that's so important in terms of getting back to the element of human beings of feeling empathetic, of having
Hmm.
compassion, of wakening to the sensation of caring for each other, of really, really caring for each other. And what I see that the both of you have done is you care. And that is not something you can go to school for and you get a degree in. Oh, I've graduated in care, right? I'm a philanthropist, right? Okay, all that's good. But where did the intrinsic motivation to care come from for both of you? And when did it happen? I can look back and see myself at 4 years old wanting to play with dolls and fix them, wrap them up and bandage them. So I can go back and look and know that that part of me was there. It's just part of my purpose and my soul. What about you when it comes to care?
Wonderful question. I I can also say that from a very early age, I, for better or for worse, in my own family's stuff that I go to years of therapy for, um, was from a very early age also a carer and a partnered caretaker at times with my parents to my younger siblings, and from there, I I always just felt deeply and cared deeply and,
Mhm.
would be very deeply moved by people's stories and experiences, and I'd wanna act them out and talk about them. That's probably why I went into the performing arts,
Mhm.
and, but just felt so much, and I always was confused growing up, honestly, a lot of times as to, like, why why people didn't care more. And it actually, I remember as a kid in elementary school having many times that I cried about the fact that people didn't care about things more. Like, oh my gosh, I'll cry now. But I remember, I think it might have been in second or third grade, and we were learning how to read the newspaper and critically think about things. And we read an article about uh, the current climate changes that were happening and the environment and these predictions that they were putting in the paper is that, in our lifetime, if things keep going like they're going, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And I just remember thinking, why is no one standing up and screaming fire? And like, why are we just going to the movies? And like, why? So I don't know. I think I've just always, maybe it's in my DNA or I'm just built that way. I'm not sure, but I've sought out situations and people who have nurtured that and understood that. And that's been helpful because the world is full of people that also find it like baffling at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
Good story. Yeah. I don't have a good story from childhood really. Um, I like Maria. I think I'm a very deeply feeling person, annoyingly so sometimes for myself. Um, and certainly, like in high school, uh, there were I can think of examples of like um, being like a retreat leader. That was a really big thing for me, and it was really important to me to like create experiences where people had had good experiences and felt connected with each other and with themselves and with a higher power and all of that. But I think I really got supercharged on that sort of thing through environmental and union movements in my adulthood. That's when I really got radical, I would say. Um,
Radical in your care.
Radical in my care. That's when I started standing up and saying fire and started getting
Mm.
arrested at the White House, at the UN, for different social justice movements and organizing with unions and participating in strikes and things like that. Um,
So
yeah.
the fierce feminine, the courageous feminine, standing up. When you say feminine, do you relate she or do you say she he feminine? What
Mm.
do you say?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
When you use the word feminine, do you relate feminine to she or do
Mm.
you relate feminine to what I call she he? In other words, that
Oh,
feminine
Oh, I
energy
see.
is in every human being, right?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully. and if it hasn't been
Well,
squashed.
it is whether it's been awakened. We can't
Yeah.
That's true.
deny that we are formed out of these
Yeah.
2
Mhm.
energies. The universe calls them the twins, the twin
Right.
energies,
Yeah.
the builders of anything. I'm
Yeah.
in the habit of saying feminine and thinking she, and then I get
Mhm.
a picture. However, I have a lot of gay friends that, of course, this is a very fluid word.
Mhm. Yeah. I think, you know, uh, because of, I think, my own conditioning and how I know most people see the world, when I say feminine or I hear feminine or someone's talking about feminine, I of course get mostly an image of like a pretty femme, like high femme, lipstick, heels kind of vibe. But when I feel like I'm talking about embodying a feminine, or when I, do deity work or things like that, it's very much uh, in that fluid, almost both slash non-binary world, knowing full and well that like it's almost like that Amazonian of like I can nurse my babe at my breast, but I can also stab you in the neck at the same time
Mhm,
and
mhm.
lead the charge if I need to. um I think there's this duality in both, and I think it's necessary. I think in like for women in particular, I think it's necessary to hone both of those things, because there's so much carnage in creation, and nothing can be precious, but everything is precious and you have to care, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
There's so much to talk about around this topic because the integrating of feminine in is real. I mean, when talking about the she he that you brought up, it makes me think of an integrated man who has done enough work to accept his feminine side and to you know move past some of the mm, limitations that our culture might put on them in terms of experiencing their feelings or how they express anger or any of the numerous ills that can come from not being in touch with your feminine side. um, but then I also think of like uh, how if I think I think like I don't think it works the same. It's a different kind of integration for women these days. I think uh, be, because I feel like in our culture, male energy is respected more than female energy, certainly in business and things like that. And so I feel in the past, certainly like early waves of feminism, I think. Um, the idea was for women to become more like men in the workplace and things
Mhm.
like that. Um, and I hope that we're like moving to new stages beyond that now.
I think we're moving the needle a little bit in that regard, but I think it also comes hand in hand with moving society and moving bigger structures. Because I think, to your point, it did used to be like, if I'm going to join the workforce, I have to put up with X, Y, and Z. I have to have an attitude like this. I have to dress like this, because you're going into an existing structure that is already not conducive to you. And so I'm hoping that as we change structures and change society and environments in this way, that they can become more of a place that is accepting to that true, grounded, powerful female place that you can bring to the table, that does look different and will be called assertive and not hysterical.
I think that I I feel like I'm going back in time when I listen to you. Back in time when I had these conversations with, myself in the '70s, right? When I was one of the few, people on my block to stay home with my children, I didn't work,
Mhm.
and it was so lonely, and everybody was out working, and they were exciting lives, I felt, right? And I began to question myself, "Wow, am I wasting my time, my energy on raising children? Everybody else is out working," right? So when you talk about the needle shifting, it has shifted. I think it's shifted in a very big way. And I think it's also something that is, going to continue to shift with conversations like this. Um, what is your biggest fear when you think about moving that needle? What's your biggest fear?
Currently for myself, my biggest fear is, uh, the role the what we're seeing in terms of rights being rolled back
Mhm.
in states across the US.
Yeah.
Um, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, uh, is dangerous, and it sent our country back in time. Uh, that's terrifying. I having gone through a pregnancy fairly recently myself and knowing how dangerous it can be and how many ups and downs there are in that process. Um, and even most importantly, actually, I'll just share this too. Last summer, I had a miscarriage, and it was almost to the second trimester, and it became complicated, and I had to go to the hospital to because I was coming down with signs of sepsis. And if I had been in another state, if I had been in a different location in present day 2023, it would be a very different situation. My life would look very different. And that really that hits home in a tangible way.
Yeah.
Seeing what's going on with that. And that's terrifying to me because women are dying and women will die. And it's just to me, it's malicious negligence and ignorance, and it's unacceptable for a country that calls themselves a modern country, a first world country. It's unacceptable to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think and sort of hand in hand with that, I'm horrified by the rise uh, of misogyny and white supremacy, all this bigotry, and there's just been such permission given to some of the ugliest uh, desires or behaviors of our society that like a generation ago still existed, of course, but
Seemed more
they
fringe,
they were
right?
more
Yeah.
fringe and not platformed the way they're getting platformed now. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
a sad development to
Yeah.
me.
Do you think that what we are experiencing is a rewriting of the story, but a part of rewriting of the story is that you have to shine light on the things that are often the darkest, and that then can, for many people, be the sand in the oyster shell to then say, okay, as you said, I am going to use my voice, I am going to do something now, and maybe not end up in jail, but
No,
be
no,
courageous enough to
absolutely.
do something, to do something.
Mhm.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's why there is a movement to suppress stories right now.
Mhm.
Literal
And banned books.
legislation to
Mhm.
ban books
Mhm.
and ban the teaching of history, and that is in part why storytelling is so powerful.
It is, and, I mean, the reason that we do what we do, uh, and provide platforms for people to tell their stories and help them develop those stories is because it is so powerful. Uh, it is always the case, right? Jens was talking earlier about we don't recognize our like your unseen privilege. You don't recognize the struggle of others in certain ways because you're not experiencing it. And the powerful nature of when something finally happens to you or hits close to home to you, and then you share that story, it's very powerful. I think back to a couple decades ago when the hot topic was, marriage equality, and it was like until you had a cousin or an uncle who couldn't get married, uh, like everyone thought it was this, that gay marriage was this thing that happened to other people in other places until it comes knocking on your door. And unfortunately, with how things are trending right now, and with legislation and like he said, people coming from the fringes to the forefront and having a platform, it's getting a little scary for a lot of people, and so the time is now to start telling your stories. And thank God technology has kept pace and like increased, because we are now connected on this global scale that we've never had before. So I actually remain very hopeful, and even more hopeful in the power of storytelling, because we have so much perspective now that we can get. We can log on to anything, any device out of our pocket, and learn about someone else's perspective. And you yourself can share your story at any time too, and that's a very powerful thing.
So,
Um,
so tell me a little bit more about your Bechdel project and how did that come about, and what does it mean for you to have this idea, this vision, this dream, and you're watching it come to life?
do you want to start?
Sure. Actually, Bechdel Project was started in 2015. I started it with two other colleagues. Uh, Maria and I knew each other, but we weren't.
We weren't involved, and we were just mostly
Yeah,
peers and colleagues in
right.
the performing arts industry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was working with a different organization.
and we very quickly started getting requests from universities to do workshops, and so we were doing that along with supporting some writers on various projects. But it was sort of ad hoc, and
Mhm.
no real programming around the developing of work. And then the pandemic happened, and one of my colleagues moved to Omaha, and the other colleague left the business, and and the pandemic was going on, and I assumed that the organization was kind of done. I didn't feel like I was going to run the organization by myself. Um, but during the pandemic, Maria and I started talking, and I think amazingly, or I was very excited that she expressed interest in Bechdel Project. She had actually attended the
Mhm.
opening,
Mhm.
the launch party for the organization, so she had some familiarity,
Mhm.
and since she's come on, uh, the the programming has absolutely like just exploded, where it's so incredible. I can't believe everything that we've accomplished in the tail end of the pandemic into this post pandemic era. And
Amazing.
yeah, we're super excited.
I've been very excited to watch the growth of the organization, and it is, of course, thrilling to work with someone who you can bring ideas to and say, "I have this kind of like crazy idea, but I think it's gonna be really cool." And to have someone to work with that says yes and can pick up that project with you and run with it. And it's truly, I think, the most impactful thing that I've loved the most is just in such a short amount of time. To Jens's point, an organization going from serving, maybe like 20, 30 artists per year, um, to now last year alone, I think we were able to serve upwards of like 350 artists just with our community space program. And then that doesn't even count our other programming that we do that's more one-on-one development. So it's been very rewarding to give artists the gift of creating and a space to create in and development opportunities. It's very, very affirming.
So, how does that work? So, there are artists out there, and
Mhm.
you have a space and you have an organization. How does it work? Do we submit to
Mhm.
Yeah,
rent
it's a
the
good question.
space, to tell a story, to show our work? How does it work?
So we have a few different programs. Primarily, our long-term programming having to do with residencies and fellowships is geared towards playwrights and screenwriters. So long form, public presenting style storytellers. And then our community space program, we have a studio here in Brooklyn, and that program is basically a granting program where people can apply. Anyone doing work around gender equity. You could be a performing artist, you could be a writer, you could be a community
Dancer.
leader, you could be a dancer, you could be a photographer. If your work is anything around gender equity, elevating the voices of women and underrepresented genders, we want to hear from you. And you fill out an application online, and we're able to grant a certain amount of hours per month. And it means that you have access, free access to the studio for that time. And space rental, having to pay for a space, to use it is most likely about half of an artist's budget.
Mm.
And it's very expensive, especially in New York City. So there are many times that stuff just won't get made, or it won't get made as well as it could be because artists can't foot that bill. And so by alleviating that huge part of the cost and the budget, uh, you know, people's passion projects and people's work has been able to actually go on to be created. It's very rewarding in that regard.
I love it. You're giving people a stage to not only self actualize the voice or the idea that is living in them, but to also, in a sense, package it in a way where, as an artist, you can say, I sold my art or I created my art. I somehow was able to package it and put it into a frame, basically, to stand back and look at it and listen to it and see it or present it and then hear feedback from an audience is very, very rewarding for an artist, and particularly around uh, gender equity concepts that can be frightening to share.
Mhm. It
I've
also
had.
could be frightening to a lot of organizations that might not wanna take a risk on that kind of material, because
Mhm.
that's still part of the play that's happening right now, with when it comes to arts organizations and support for artists, people with the biggest money and the biggest budgets still have to answer to quite a large board, and there's still a lot of conservative and safe um, tactics. There's often gatekeeping. So for us as an organization too, what's really nice about that is, to your point, a lot of artists that are able to do things that are maybe more experimental or more pushing the envelope that a larger organization just might not want to take the risk on. Um, Also, something that's really important and unique and special that we do that I just wanted to also share is that uh, we there is no gatekeeping at our organization. And one of the things that we're passionate about is resource sharing and wealth redistribution and eliminating hierarchy. It's these tenets of feminism that we walk the walk and basically put our money put our money where our mouth is. And so what that looks like is, for our artists that work with us, we are happy to share any of the benefits that we get as a nonprofit. So fiscal sponsorship or access to certain other organizations that only nonprofits and their associates get. Things like that that normally you would not have access to as an individual artist. That's really important to us too in fostering community and and giving people opportunity that they wouldn't normally get. Because going back to that idea, intersectional feminism, it's like, just because we are a nonprofit organization and we've paid the money to become that and we have these resources, that doesn't mean that we're like this. We're not up here serving the women and others down here. We want to practice true equity and have a full plate for us all to pick and choose what we need from.
Beautiful. Is there a story? You talk about, all stories are important, whether it is a story around the water cooler, a story across the dinner table. Um, my husband and I have always said we'd love nothing more than to open up a restaurant and put microphones under every table.
Ah,
Just just to go back and, "Did you hear that story? Did you hear that story?" And you can't make stuff up sometimes, because lives are so rich and colorful, and when people are free, they're in a safe environment to really speak their truth, share their truth, talk about what's inside them that's meaningful and personally, important to them. There's nothing better. Do you have a story that comes to mind that you could say, "It just blew my mind. I can't imagine not ever hearing that story."
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, sure. I mean, our Rue resident, that is, I think, a great example of that. Um, our one of our flagship programs is the Rue residency. Rue stands for Room of One's Own. Uh, the Virginia Woolf, taken from the Virginia Woolf book. Um, and our first Rue resident, Jeannie Dorsey, wrote a play about Martha Goddard. Martha Goddard, I don't think any of us knew. We didn't know
Mhm.
before this story. She brought this story to us. Martha Goddard is the woman that is responsible for the creation of the standardized rape kit. And she was an activist with a high school graduation, high school diploma,
Mhm,
a little bit of college. She didn't have a degree. Um, she was working as a secretary, but she was also volunteering at a crisis on a crisis hotline.
mhm,
And through the stories of these young people that she was listening to, she
Mhm.
said, "You have to do something about this."
Mhm.
And so she sort of single-handedly created the idea of gathering evidence of a crime scene off of a woman's body, off of a person's body, and talk to the police about how does that evidence collected, how would that evidence be collected so that it can be useful. Talk to psychologists about how to, and medical professionals about how to conduct that so as to not re-traumatize the victims,
Mhm.
and 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 went on to spread it nationally. Like was
right.
then like yeah, so incredible story, and
And also a
and forgotten,
tragic
and then
character as
and
well.
yes,
Yeah. Um, yeah. Forgotten, erased, ended up suffering her own sexual assault in her life, never reported it,
Wow.
and then drank herself to death in Arizona.
Wow.
So an incredibly powerful, world-changing person that was also conflicted and troubled and had her own life. And our writer Jeannie Dorsey presented that story as the play that she wanted to work on during her 1 year residency. And now we're on our way to getting that. Its next step is a designer workshop with her, and it will go on and on and on. But that's a story that I would have never known,
yeah,
and very powerful, and still important and poignant today with the backlog of, like, there's a backlog of rape kits, and only 6% of rapists ever see jail time, and it's still a very relevant problem. And uh so stories like that, I think, bring things to the forefront that we just we would never know
yeah.
otherwise. Yeah.
What are you I asked you what you were most afraid of when you think about, you know, moving the needle of feminism. What are you most excited about when you vision a future? What are you most excited about?
Young people
Yeah.
is the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think of I think of my nephew, and that whole generation just seems like to understand and embody a lot of what it took me decades to figure out. They like already have it, so
Mm,
it makes me like I think about how much further they're going to go.
mm, yeah. I also think about how much they're gonna have to carry too. It's a double-edged sword, uh, to know so young and,
Yeah,
it takes away a lot too.
yeah.
Um, but I, I'm very excited for, the opportunities, the unseen opportunities that people don't even realize are coming their way because of, uh unleashing voices, unleashing stories, and unleashing ideas from people who have been marginalized or silenced for a really long time, or never given the platform, or never been handed the microphone to hear what they have to say. The world will benefit in a million beautiful ways, from jobs to stories to everything in between. Children will have better parents because of it. It's all very exciting, I think. And I think change scares people, and the unknown scares people, and it'd be much safer to know the leash and the parameters that you currently have than to venture out into something new. But there's some really great stuff out there because we haven't been hearing from everyone. And there are a lot of really wonderful things that people have to contribute.
Absolutely. I think when I think about the word feminism, and again, I've had the privilege of studying Aikido, and on the mat, you're working with yin and yang energies. There's no label. It's an energetic dynamic that allows one to protect yourself and also take care of the other, harmonizing conflict. It's such a
Mm,
beautiful, beautiful concept and idea. Anyone that has given birth physically or to a project that has taken years, arduous work, moments where you were frightened to death that it wasn't going to happen or what could happen, the feeling of being alone, and yet at the same time being so deeply spiritually connected to something magical and wondrous, walking that tightrope of logic and mystery at the same time, and knowing that the change is inevitable, that the change is what is going to birth the vision that we have as human beings. The fact that we have people like you who have set a beautiful intent and are carrying out that intent through action and also through manifestation of vision, visioning something that has never been, but visioning something that is fulfilling a great need in our culture today. And that need is, how do we navigate the uncertain, that in many ways, when we dig around inside, we feel a certain, and yet the cleaning out of the old wounds, and you said baggage, we won't have to carry so much, to putting down the old stories and not forgetting, but to know that those stories and the people that have lived those stories, we stand on their shoulders. We walk on the path that they have laid down for us. And yet, I do believe it is our responsibility to carry things forward, to take it forward, to use the knowledge that we have and the knowledge that we are awakened to by having the light shine on things that we didn't see that have always been there. And then using that knowledge so that we can create a better world for ourselves and better world for all people, for humanity. I think this is our responsibility as a human being in today's world. The the voice, the screams of a mother giving birth, I think right now that's what the universe is doing, the earth is doing. You know, the beingness of humanity is doing, screaming, basically open up the windows and saying, "I'm not gonna take it anymore." Right? This has to change.
Yeah.
We can be forced to change, or we can be part of the change, and you 2 are absolutely, part of the change. And, years ago, and when I was a young child, my mother took me to an art exhibit, and I saw the art exhibit. It was called The Birth Project, and I said, "Someday I'm gonna do something like that," and I filed it away, and it haunted me. It was like I couldn't put it down, and then in 1992, I just started drawing these pictures, and this information started coming out about the goddess after I had seen a movie called The Goddess Remembered by 3 fantastic Canadian filmmakers. The Goddess Remembered, The Burning Times, and Full Circle. 3 fantastic movies. Changed my life. And what I felt after watching the first one was I was so angry. How could all this information about the history of women and the goddess be there? And how could I have possibly graduated high school and be the age that I am? And nobody told me. How is that possible? And I think what you're doing right now is making it possible for that to not happen, for stories to be told, and you're providing a platform for people to do very, very courageous work. And to, as Bruce Lipton says, we inform ourselves by the internal environment that we create. It's not just enough to pray or meditate to create an internal environment, but it's our responsibility to create a safe external environment so people can discover their greatest potential and discover who they are. So I really honor you both for the work that you're doing, and I hope people will seek you out. Where can they find more information about you?
The easiest place is our website, which is Bechdel Project. It's spelled Bechdel project.org. That's the
There you
one-stop shop for everything you
One
need to
stop
know.
shop. Well, I
Yes.
know that you said that feminism benefits us all. Is there a last word that you want to share with our listeners today? Something that's in your heart?
Share your story.
Yeah, I think so.
Yay.
Um, yeah. There's power in your words
Mhm.
and your own personal experiences. Someone wants to hear it. Someone's gonna be changed by it. And, I think the more we also give room to people, uh, who maybe haven't had the opportunity to speak previous, I think those people we might have the most to learn from.
Yeah, I love that. Tell your story. This is a book, right? What's most interesting I find when I meet somebody is tell me about you. I want to know the deep dark secrets. I want to know all the stuff, right? And I feel so alive. It doesn't matter whether it's a dark story or a light story or good, bad, ugly. There's an aliveness that comes with truth and sharing your own story to yourself first and with others. Such an empowering activity. So thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. And if you'd like to find out more about me, please visit my online magazine, Awakening Body and Life, at debbieroses.com. You can browse and read, and you can also sign up to receive inspiring body and life wisdom every single week. You can also find me on Facebook by searching Nia, on Twitter and Instagram at Nia Technique, on nianow.com. And I invite you also to go to nianow.com. You can get 2 weeks free to experience this beautiful movement art, music art that we call Nia. It's a workout, a practice, and a lifestyle. Thanks again. And don't forget, this really is our time to get into the conversation and get into the heart of everything. Let's be part of the change. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.